Greetings, friends. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach. And we're going to have a really fun conversation today. It's going to require a little bit of openness, honesty, and vulnerability, because I think all of us we have at one time or another been victims of one kind of scam or hoax or something that maybe cost us in some ways. And, you know, it's something that happens to everyone. And in this day and age, who doesn't get, scam SMS messages on their phone or phishing emails or something? And so the question that we're asking today is, what's it like? What can we do about it? How did I not see that sooner? I fell for that. Well, we're going to have some fun with this topic today. But before we go any further, I want to give my co-hosts an opportunity to introduce themselves. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the program again. I'm so delighted that you're constantly showing up here. It makes this just such a fun place to be. Today, I want to start with you, Scott. Introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you? What do you do? And why?
The why is always changing, doesn't it? Hi, I'm Scott Holmes. I'm from Boston. I am an intuitive energy healer. What that means is that we look at your entire body, your emotional, spiritual, all parts to be able to find and get to the root of problems. We all have a problem of one sort or another. And I work with professional men and women to get them to the point of being their authentic selves. And why do I do it? Because I had the journey myself. I found all the pitfalls, all of the cliffs that I almost fell over, and I like to be able to guide them through their healing journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I've gone through it too, and that's part of the reason that I want to give back. That's part of my why. It maybe not the biggest part, but certainly a big part of it. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to go next.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane. I'm in the UK. And I work with energy in the form of Reiki and in the form of sound toning, supporting people to connect with their inner child, the hurt, the pain, and the trauma. And as our child feels listened to, heard, seen by ourselves, they feel better, they feel happier, they feel confident. And that confidence can build in the person we are today, because that is what I've been able to do for myself, from the insecurities of people pleasing, of feeling unworthy, unloved, unwanted, ungood enough, etc., to having the confidence to be able to be here and be in affairs and events and not worry about what other people think about me. And I've also set up Gift of Healing TV, and I interview people on a regular weekly basis. All the four of us here, but all three of the co-hosts here, they've all been on the program, will be on the program, sort of, because we all love to share the wisdom. Well, I know I do, but I'm getting the same with all of them. The wisdom we have learnt from our own healing journey. And if that supports somebody, when I say speed up the process, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an overnight for you. The healing journey is, and I think it's never ending, to be perfectly honest. It's all layers of the onion. But we have that space between to be able to integrate the growth rather than the changes, as far as I'm concerned. And right. I do it because I just love to help people. I love to see people find themselves.
Right. Beautiful. And it's so important, isn't it, that the inner child work? It's easy to dismiss it as, oh, I'm already grown up, I don't have to do that. I mean, that's just dredging up old wounds and blah, 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 blah. And so it's easy to dismiss it. But I'll tell you something, friends, that is the most important work you'll ever do, really. And it is absolutely amazingly healing. Gail, Share with us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why.
Yes, thank you, David. I'm Gail Nowak. I'm based in Massachusetts, and I support spirit-led entrepreneurs and conscious leaders in being fully seen without abandoning themselves, without sacrificing self-trust. And a big reason why I do that, and a big reason why this conversation today matters so much to me, is because many of us learn through, speaking of inner child, through childhood and growing up, we learn to sort of silence our intuition, and our discernment can get a little wonky. And so yeah, I see this a lot in my own personal journey and in my work with clients around visibility, is rediscovering that discernment and learning to trust in it again, and offering people a way to sort of meet those moments where that maybe they felt like, oh my gosh, I fell for that, with compassion instead of shame. So I'm excited to be here today and to share and to hear all of your perspectives and hopefully share some wisdom for those who are tuning in. And if anything resonates with folks, I invite you to, reach out to us, any one of us, and connect. That's what we're here for. So thanks, David.
I was going to say, Gail, I love it when you use technical terms. You just dig right in and pick out a word like wonky. Beautiful. Yeah. And wonky is a good word, I think, because sometimes the world feels that way, doesn't it? and no less so than when somebody that maybe you trust takes advantage of you in a way that costs you in some significant way. It's one thing to take advantage of a situation, I think, but to take advantage of a person, and even worse, to manipulate that person into such a position that you can then take advantage of it, that really calls for a certain kind of dark side, that I think would need to be healed. And one of the things that I would love is for some of those fraudsters and scammers to come to the realization that they need to do their own inner work and come and listen to this show. But since that's probably not going to happen, all we can do as people who are on the other end of that kind of behavior is learn how to deal with it, learn to become more discerning, learn to be more compassionate, and understand that some of the times when these people are doing things, they're not necessarily doing it from a place of consciousness. They're doing it from their own hurts, their own wounds. So I guess the way I'd like to start this is maybe talk a little bit about some examples of when you got taken in, when you got taken advantage of, when you found yourself falling for somebody's scam, and maybe didn't realize it until after it was all over. I got a good one I'm going to share, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to put that aside and let you folks talk a little bit first. So who's feeling? Oh, Scott, you look like you got something ready to go.
Yeah, in walking with this, what you were saying about those people that really use and abuse others. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink. You can bring them to here. But even if they sat and listened to all of this, they may not even be consciously aware of it.
Right.
So as a reformed people pleaser, I had always had my cape on, ready to fly in and save the day for people. And what I found is that those closest to me were the ones that kind of took me in. Now, in growing up, my daughters, they would say to me, my wife and I, "You never really said no." And it's like, yeah, in raising you, you knew what the boundaries were, and we never really said no. And as they grew up, what happened was the asks, the dollar amounts got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
As they get older, it wasn't just $10; it was $1,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I never said no. we always felt that we had to. And as they were in their 20s and late 20s, all of a sudden it kind of dawned on us that they were kind of using us as the bank.
Yeah, right.
And we would look, and they would spend money, and we'd kind of look at it. And as a parent, I don't know if you've been in this position of having bitten your tongue once or twice, and as they're raising kids, you bite your tongue even more, and you walk around with the blood in your mouth. But because you can only offer advice, you raise them, you feel like you raised them well, and then they make decisions like that. And we enabled them. My wife and I enabled them to be able to continue the behavior.
Yeah.
One of the things that this came up, it was about me failing to recognize that their dad, and they've got that certain tone when my girls would say dad, and I'd start reaching in my pocket, for money, because I knew it was an I want,
Right.
And when I started not jumping into the phone booth to change into my outfit with the cape and fly to their rescue, when I hesitated, when I held a breath, and I waited for them to think about how they could solve their problem, and I took a step back, that's when all of a sudden they started finding ways to solve the problem themselves, that I wasn't so quick. And if they were in real trouble, I would be there in a heartbeat.
Right.
But it's all those little things that they began to solve for themselves. And I realized I had fallen for this, and I had allowed it for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I stopped, our relationships changed for the better. That they weren't still 17-year-old, they were 27, 30, 32-year-olds, and could solve their own problem.
Right.
When they were coming to my wife and I for money, and between they and their husbands, they were earning a lot more than we were, yet we were the ones that they asked for money. And so I finally had to sit my wife down and say, okay, they should be sending money this way.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
That's exactly it. And she kind of looked at me and said, well, no, we're their parents. And I said, yes, and it's time that they stood on their own and be parents for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
So,
that was
good
the
for
first thing
you.
that came to mind for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Who else would like to go?
Okay, I will. In some respects, I feel so embarrassed about this, but I am going to share the story. I've got a lovely group of friends, and I spent some Sunday evenings being security on a singles club. I'm 5'2", and I was security on a singles club. Great fun, amazing fun. And I met a younger man, and it was more of a friendship than anything else. And he needed somewhere to live. I'd got a spare bedroom. I was an absolute idiot. And I can see that now. And it was, yes, okay, fine. Sorted out whatever his rent was going to be, that never got paid. I didn't have a TV license because I didn't have a television. And I made it very clear from the outset, I don't have a license. There is no television in this house. You do not watch television in this house. And then I discovered he was watching television in the house, which meant I had to fork out for a TV license. Otherwise, there's I don't know what the fine is today, but £200-300 odd pound fine for not having something that cost a lot less than that. So I was also stupid enough to so-called lend him some money. And that ended up by being quite a lot. Into a few thousands. And it started to get to the stage where I thought, something's got to happen here. And then suddenly he just disappeared. Packed all his stuff, left, leaving both my front door and back door unlocked, and taking the keys with him. I was just like, So I was delighted to see the back of him. I was quite a few thousand out of pocket.
Right.
But that was the people pleaser. That was the person who cared so much about others. But I should have been saying no. I should have kicked him out. I should have turned around and said, pay your rent. I've got the bills to pay, and you're increasing my bills because you're here. And I didn't. And gratefully, it was only for about a year, but I was a lot out of pocket.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it isn't just about people pleaser. It is just about almost caring too much about others, almost in the same way that you were, Scott. I didn't say no and make him stand on his own 2 feet. And I was really taken as a mug. I really was. But it can happen to anybody.
Sure.
And it has made me, it doesn't stop me from caring, but it has made me tougher. And does make me think. And now I share a house with another gentleman who I do trust. And we do pay our own way. So it's not, and that's the important thing. You don't let something that happens to you prevent you from being able to trust the people that actually you can trust.
Yeah. And I think you've hit on a key point here, is trust. I mean, I think a lot of us, I can speak for myself for sure. I'm a very trusting person. I tend to trust people initially 100%. I have that quality. It's pretty rare that I'll meet somebody for the first time and feel myself saying, this is not a person I want to hang with. Of course, I don't meet a lot of people anyway. So most of the people I do meet are decent, good people. So I tend to trust right off the bat. And it usually takes some kind of action or behavior before I remember, oh yeah, I've been trusting without thinking. Sometimes I need to, do a check-in and make a more discerning look at this person and make a decision about whether I should be trusting or not. Gail, did you want to share an incident that was important to you?
Yeah. Hearing some similar themes, and this is a little bit different than what Scott and Sarah shared. I got involved with a spiritual community at a time when my life really looked fine from the outside, but inside I was feeling pretty empty and lost. And even though I had started already my healing journey, I had done therapy, I was doing other healing work, but something just felt really unresolved for me. And I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't feel like it was something that I could talk about with the people who were in my everyday life. And this community was really focused on this particular experience and these feelings that I was having. And so initially it was kind of like relief, right? Like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. This is happening to other people. They understand me, they get me. And so I was, feeling hopeful that I was in the right place and getting the support that I needed. But the thing is, there were things from the very beginning. Those red flags, yellow flags, whatever you want to call them, they were there from the very beginning. Hindsight is 2020, right? We had that episode a few months ago. And so there were members in this group. And I remember this one time watching a couple of them get into very public, dramatic conflicts online and thinking, okay, something's off about this. I specifically remember saying out loud as I was watching it unfold, like, I am too old for this BS. Right then and there, right? Like already my body's saying, you don't belong here, right? But I'm like, well, you know what? I started to rationalize it and told myself, you know what, they're younger than I am. They're emotionally immature. And what I later discovered is like, that may have been true, but really this was the culture of the group that I was in. And fear really kept me there for several months. There was this unspoken, and this is a spiritual group, right? Like, so this is supposed to be awake, aware, right? So it's a little messy because they're saying the right things. Just like we were encouraging people, like, do your inner work. Like, this was the message, but there was this piece of like, if you don't do the work the right way, which was the way that the leader of the group wanted you to do it, you're going to feel the way you feel right now for the rest of your life. And it was a fear tactic. It was this person and the members of the group really, either consciously or unconsciously, I think some of them consciously, were preying on those fears of the people in the group. There were members who were publicly humiliated, sometimes after making huge destabilizing life decisions. And so like, I kept getting the evidence, but I stayed for about 6 months. And I think that the moment that it really shifted for me was when I was specifically in the crosshairs with the leader of the group. She was putting out a new program. It was a financial program. And it was, when she initially offered it, she didn't communicate that it was mandatory and for life. So, and I had other things going on where I felt like I was supported in that area. So I was like, I'm not interested, right? I didn't respond or anything, but I didn't raise my hand. I didn't specifically say, hey, I'm not interested. And those of us who didn't sign up were, again, publicly shamed, publicly ridiculed. And she and I had a very specific moment where it became very clear to me what her psychic abilities that she was claiming, were likely overstated. And I had very specific evidence that helped me see that. And something clicked and I was like, you know what? This isn't spiritual support. This isn't psychic powers. This is control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, this is control. She is not here to help these people. She's here to take advantage of them. Yeah. And I left. I sent a very short email. I didn't explain. I didn't, justify. I was just like, I'm out. But I'll tell you, I definitely had that moment afterwards. I was still afraid. Like, I was afraid. I was afraid of the consequences of leaving. I did receive an email from her solicitor. God knows if this was truly a lawyer or not, but it was a pretty strong and threatening email. And I remember at this time, I was also in another program that actually was very supportive and healthy, led by someone who, truly is a leader. And I'm so grateful that I was having these contrasting experiences happening at the same time, because it probably saved me from a lot of things, right? I mean, I was paying this woman monthly, this woman who was kind of doing all these really unsavory things.
Do you mind saying how much you were paying?
Oh, I don't remember exactly, but it was probably like $200 or $300 a month.
Yeah, that's still not insignificant. Yeah, it's
not insignificant. This was at a time where I wasn't necessarily making consistent, steady income either.
Right. Yeah.
So it was an emotional drain. It was a financial drain. It was a drain. It was actually like having impact with my relationships with my family. Like, there's a lot here that I'm not even sharing. But anyway, I remember getting on the phone the day after I left, getting on the phone with my coach, the good coach, we'll call her the good coach, and just bursting into tears and saying, I think I was in a cult. like, I don't know what this is. I feel so stupid. I feel so turned upside down. I can't believe that I saw the signs and I just ignored it. And, again, like, I'm so grateful that, for whatever reason, it was all happening at the same time. And my coach, she validated my experience. She normalized it. She even shared I wouldn't say it's exactly the same situation, but kind of a fallout that she had with a mentor and a teacher. And that helped, that helped move me a little bit out of that shame space.
Right.
And ultimately, I mean, it took time. First of all, I was freaked out about like what is going to happen because I've left the group, right? But also sort of like that programming, that messaging of like, well, you're going to forever feel miserable by leaving too. So it took some time and space, but ultimately I was able to look at it and recognize like, okay, not failure, lots of lessons here. And I fell for it because I was open and curious and trying to experience life in a fuller and different way. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was really about learning some lessons about listening to my body and listening to my feelings and honoring those things and having better discernment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Gail. I appreciate it. And I hear the vulnerability in your share, and I want to acknowledge that. One of the things that I take away from this is you got to be careful about everything. Just because something is labeled as spiritual or conscious or whatever other term they choose to use, that doesn't mean that's the case. People will use whatever words they want in order to get what they want, and they're trying to sell you something ultimately. And that's how it boils down, right? I remember joining a group here in Idaho called Conscious Singles. And, it was just a meetup group. And I went because I'm single and I wanted to meet other conscious singles, but I wasn't impressed with the people who showed up. Most of them hadn't done any personal growth work, and we'd go to the meetings and all I'd hear are these, whiny stories about stuff. And I said, nah, this is not for me. These people are not conscious. They're not doing their own work. They're coming here to look for, someone to cuddle them and take care of them. That's what they're looking for. And so sometimes you have to dip your toe into the pool to discover, okay, it's not really what it says, Okay, I'm going to share my big one now because this one, I've never shared this in public, by the way. So this will be interesting. In 2000 I don't remember when it was, 2010 timeframe approximately. I was living in California. I was still working for a high-tech company, making lots of money, doing work that I enjoyed, but it wasn't really soul empowering work like I'm doing now. But anyway, somebody told me about an investment opportunity in Chile, not far from Santiago. It was an organization called Galt's Gulch, named after John Galt, the main character from The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. So that should give you some context of what this place was supposed to represent, And I kind of liked it. I liked the idea of a community of people who were, self-supporting and so forth. Well, the other aspect of it was you as an investor could purchase a chunk of land that could be used as farming for lemons. They have a lot of lemons down there. Lemon farming is pretty prosperous. And I thought, wow, that'd be kind of cool. I could own a 10-acre plot of land or whatever it was, 10 or 20 acres, I can't remember, and sell lemons and make up some of the cost. It sounded like a good idea. I did a lot of due diligence. I studied up on all of their prospectuses and I looked at everything. And I mean, all the people looked like decent folks. So I said, yeah, I think I'm willing to do this. And the purchase price for one of these was like $375,000 or something like that for that chunk of land. And I said, well, I don't have all that money available right now. I want to do this in payments. Is that okay? And they said, sure. So I made a commitment for 50 grand, 50,000 bucks I put in. And everything was all hunky-dory. I got all the paperwork. Everything was all good. And then about a month later, 6 months later, or 3 months later, whatever time frame it was, I said, okay, I got another chunk of money from my stock investments. I'm going to give you another 80,000. Well, something happened in the transmission of that 80,000. It never got received by the people it was supposed to go to. It somehow got diverted, and the person who was supposed to receive it contacted me and said, oh, yeah, we got the money. Don't worry about it. There's just a bit of a miscommunication here. I said, okay, good. So we're all good to go. But then there was a bunch of other weird things that started happening, and I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? And then I heard that the main guy, his name was Ken Johnson, and I'm publicly stating his name out loud. He disappeared. He was the guy who was in charge of this whole project. He disappeared, and so did all the money. All the money. So there was a lady who had participated in this, and she was just absolutely furious. She decided to start up a legal team to go and fight in Santiago court to try and get this money back and to sue these people and stuff. So I got involved with that, and I mean, we had to pay the lawyers, right? So I had to pay another $2,500. Well, by comparison, $2,500 wasn't very much. So I gladly parted with that money. And so they did everything they could to try and track this guy down. Well, do you know how much money he ended up walking away with? $10 million, US dollars. One investor, I only was in for 135 or 130,000, I think it was. Another investor was in for over 2 million. And that money was lost. So now in retrospect, I look back at this and I say, well, I could have made better research decisions. I could have done a better job of finding out this. I could have done that. I could have done this. I could have done that. I'll tell you, for the longest time, I was extremely embarrassed. Who wants to admit losing $135,000? Nobody wants to admit that. I got scammed, and it was a big scam. And so I was embarrassed and ashamed, and I really didn't share it very much with anybody. But now I'm over it. I mean, yeah, it's lost money. What could I have done with $135,000? I mean, I can think of a lot of things, but that's all beside the point. It's just money. It's just energy, which, you know, we can draw into ourselves. The key is I can't let that situation destroy me. I can't let it eat away at my insides. I can't let it take away from the truth of who I really am. It just is an example of where, again, I let my trust override my discernment. So, all right, you've heard a bunch of stories here now. I don't want to go into any more detail on that. You get the point. What do we take away from each of our situations? That's the question. Are we gullible? Are we too trusting? Is there something wrong with us that we allowed ourselves to fall for something like that? Well, I think the answer to all those questions is no. We're just ordinary human beings, and maybe someone else who saw us said, oh, I could get that guy. I can get him for $130,000, you know? Or I can get her to pay me $300 a month, mandatory for life. Somehow that message is getting conveyed, and it's an opportunity for all of us to learn something about ourselves. You know, if we all got out of those situations, maybe not in the way that we would have liked, but we all got out of them, right? And we all had the opportunity to reflect on those situations and to learn something about ourselves as a result. So Scott, what have you learned about yourself?
I've been scammed. MLMs, multi-level marketing, and everything sounds wonderful. And yes, it's a great way to have a secondary income, except when you have to put all the money in and then you realize nobody else wants to buy anything that you have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've been in a few MLMs too. Look at that. That was the big one. I just jumped right to the big one. There were a lot of little ones before that.
80s, 90s, early
Yep.
2000s, big deal. And so for me, it was about what I looked at what I wanted. What did these scams, what did these things that were presented to me, what did they mean to me? Because I wanted to do better for my family. I wanted to do better for myself. I wanted to feel like I had, quote unquote, succeeded. Realizing that I only had so many hours in the day, and that after working two jobs, at one point in my life, I was working 2 jobs, another part-time job, and was wondering how I could get paid to sleep. That was because that was the only time that I wasn't trying to make money, because I was trying to support a family. So what did I learn about that is that, much like Gail, the intuition, all the red flags, right? We ignore. Well, the end goal. Yeah, but hey, red flag here, yellow flag here. Hey, don't do that. People, they just shake their head and go, just don't do it. Like, no, I know better. Of course, I know better. I have great decision making. Not so much.
Don't put your hand on that stove.
I by the way, had many burnt fingers from I had to test the stove. I was one of those people.
Right, me too.
By the way, why I do the work I do is I want people not to have to touch the stove, because I've already done it. I want them to know you're not going to get any better by keep touching the stove. You just take a step back and listen to somebody else. What I learned was, and much like you, David, I trust people initially. They have to prove to me that I can't trust them. There was a trust put out there ahead of time. And I don't know how many times I've gotten burnt, how many sob stories, how many whatever story it was that hit home. And, I'd reach in my pocket and here you go. And what I learned is that I would take a breath. And it's that breath that I learned, because my initial reaction is, yes, I'll help you. Yes, I'll do this. Yes. And I would react. And taking that step back, taking a breath before I spoke, allowed me to kind of look at things in a different perspective. It allowed that other me, that 20,000 foot view of the situation, to really look at things and say, is this real, and should you wait? And waiting for me to see how things played out really, really changed how my relationships with my kids, with my friends, with people I knew, that hesitation, that just waiting, that breathing, that, let's wait and see what happens, allowed me not to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I always wanted to do better. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to be there for more people. And I allowed myself that hesitation. And in that hesitation, a lot of things fell away that I didn't have to do them. So for me, that was really what it proved time after, of course, burning my fingers on both hands in blisters, to be able not to do that anymore and to start listening.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks. So paying closer attention to the red flags, the yellow flags, and giving yourself a pause to be able to just look at the flags. If you don't necessarily have to react to them, but at least look at them. Yeah. Sarah, what did you learn about yourself as a result of this experience and others like it?
Well, I'd like to sort of address what sort of Wendy has said. And she's added something else to that. Sort of go back to the top one. I feel like always the giver. Then when I ask for help in return, I get looked at as if to say, you want my help? And I heard that so often in comments under a post, a video I put up on YouTube on the 1st of August 2024. How many times those of us that give, when we actually required for help, no one was around for us. We were used and abused because of our caring, because of our trust. And that word no, and she says, I says, in spite of how angry my daughter gets, I stand up for myself and stand the ground of no. And it's Scott said the pause. And when somebody asks me something, it's, can I think about it? Go away, give yourself time, whether it's an hour, whether it's a half a day, whether it's a whole day, whether it's a week, depending on obviously the time scale of what they are asking. Because my whole thing these days is, I am happy to help you to help yourself. I'm not here to do it for you. Because, and I know I've said this on so many occasions, because when I'm constantly doing for other people, I am holding two people back. Myself and the individual I'm doing for, because I'm preventing them from doing it for themselves, learning and growing, which is exactly what you were saying about your daughters, Scott. That constant doing for others prevents their growth. And it is a lesson that I've learnt from many different things. And yes, I should have been stronger, quicker with that particular individual. And there was another one that followed fairly quickly after that never lived in my house. And it was just like, what did I let those two do? At least that person didn't take me for a whole lot of money. Took me a whole lot of my time, but sort of, had so many meals around my place. So there was money involved in, but not physically money. And it's just like, okay, I have really got to think about people. But was I that person that they latched onto because of what did they need? What were their insecurities? And I was beginning to find a strength in me. But it was only the start of my journey. So the abuse, because to be perfectly honest, that is exactly what it is. It's manipulation, it's control. That abuse, I don't think could happen now. But I'm not saying it couldn't. But we have to be real. We have to be honest with ourselves, because I'm still in that trust of people. But maybe I'm just a little bit more attuned to that gut instinct, that intuition.
Right.
And if in doubt, not just time, I get the dowsing pendulum out. So I ask, but I don't ask the individual, I ask the universe.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And if you're comfortable with working with one of these, if you feel these work for you, then, and it's just a matter of asking a question so it can give a yes or no answer. I don't use it every day, but I do use it at times. Is this right for me? And if it says no, then no is my answer. Sometimes we've got to think that there may be an aspect of something we're asked that can be benefit to us as well. We haven't got to say no to the whole thing. We might be able to say, not that and that, but I could potentially help you with that. So it hasn't got to be the whole thing. Do what resonates with you. That is the most important thing. And that is one of the things that I have learned, is it's about what works for me, what resonates with me, what would I like to do. That isn't selfish. It's your boundaries. And we have to have boundaries. As I don't have kids, but there's so much talk about you have to give your children boundaries as children so that they can push those boundaries in a healthy way to grow and learn more. So yeah, it's a lesson to learn, and sometimes it can be a very expensive lesson.
Right. Well, you're just trading one form of energy for another, right? That's really all you're doing. Yeah. Dale, what did you learn about yourself as a result of that situation or these situations?
Oof. Learned so many things. Where to begin? I mean, yes, the pause. Scott and Sarah already spoke to this. That certainly was a big takeaway for me. Particularly having grown up in an environment where there was a lot of emotional manipulation and straight up abuse and gaslighting. If that's something that you grow up in and that's your first learnings of how people are, you question yourself, you question your inner authority. And I think that this was a big, it's easy for me to look at it this way now, right? It was a big learning for me along the lines of, number one, listening and honoring what my body was telling me, like really taking that moment of pause and naming, like, hey, I feel like something's off here. This is what I'm noticing in my body. And starting to use self-inquiry as a path to navigate and navigate back to self-trust. What am I needing in this moment? What feels true for me? That was sort of at the tail end of what was going on in that particular situation, but it was something that I carried forward with me and still practice today. I think another piece really was like this idea of it's very tempting to outsource to others, right? So we have a problem and we're looking to others to solve it for us. And there's plenty of people out there. And frankly, admittedly, I have been one of these people who has stepped into this role. There's plenty of people out there who are happy to solve it for you and save you and fix it for you. And so then we have this sometimes codependent dynamic. We talked about that earlier in the show. And so I think another big takeaway for me was like, there are ways that I'm being where I'm not taking full responsibility for myself, where I'm ignoring that, I might be saying that I'm, a creative being or a creator, but am I really showing up that way? And I believe we are all powerful creators. Sometimes we're creating from our survival patterns and our wounds and by default. And sometimes we're very conscious about what we're creating in the world. And I think that those are, some additional learnings that maybe weren't super clear right after going through that experience, but have become clearer for me as a result of going through that experience.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. One of the things that is coming up for me right now is I'm aware that people who like to manipulate other people aren't going away anytime soon. People who like to take advantage of other people aren't going away. People who like to steal aren't going away. Those people are going to be around in our lives and they're going to take stuff from us. That's just the way it is. It would be easy for me to, be all pissed off at this Ken Johnson guy because he stole $135,000 from me, and to keep rehashing all of that over and over and over in my mind. But that is a very costly process for me. Mm-hmm. So it becomes, not only did I lose $135,000, but I also lose myself in a bit, because I'm giving my power away to this image of another person I've never even physically met. And that's why we all have to learn to forgive. Forgiveness is the only way to break that connection between, or that attachment that you have to some idea for revenge or justice or getting even or whatever. You have to let that go, because it's keeping you trapped in that incident. So you have to forgive. Well, you don't have to, I guess. You can choose to continue living the way you're living if that's what you want. But if you truly want to be free and you want to, rise above and have a better life, then forgiveness is your ticket out of there. And so I've had to forgive certainly that guy and all the other people in my life who have done the same sort of manipulation to me, even though they didn't necessarily take money. They might have taken something else from me. Like I believe that somebody took my self-respect, or somebody did this or did that. What we have to do, I believe, if we wish to grow and expand and become truly magnificent beings of light and love, is we have to learn to forgive. And so one thing I do now is I have a process that I call pre-forgiveness. Because I know someone is going to screw me around and mess things up. I try to imagine that situation out there in the future and try and imagine myself releasing it right now, so that it doesn't get its hooks into me and hold me back later when it happens. It's a challenging practice, because obviously I can't know for sure exactly what's going to happen in the future, but I do know somewhere along the way, someone's going to come along to test me again. The universe is good at that. Providing little opportunities for testing. Oh, are you really over this yet? Let's check, find out. So, yeah, I laugh too, because I think the universe has a great sense of humor. I really do. And if you can laugh at it, and even when you say, I remember when we were talking about this topic before we did the write-up, I fell for that with the head slapping moment and then laughing at it afterwards. That was really the whole image that we were trying to create with this topic. So, Scott, what do you think about that? How do you use forgiveness in your life?
I can forgive people much easier than I forgive myself. I don't know if any of you have had that kind of experience, but that judge within me is much harsher with me than it is with anybody else. And holding on to the anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to feel it. You're the only one that holds on to that. You're the only one that it affects. They go on with their life and never even give it another thought, while you are holding on to that in a death grip. So the forgiveness allows me just to allow it to go, so that it takes up no more time and space in my mind, in my soul. It's not a black spot in my heart that I hold on to. I let that go, and freeing that stuff from my shoulders, those shames, the shame that oh my God, I did that. Oh, how stupid could I be? And all of those other aspects, when it comes off the shoulders, the weight isn't there anymore, and I feel much lighter and I feel much better, and I allow myself to walk forward much lighter and able to process things and think of things without that burden being there. And that's how I've been able to, no matter what goes on in my life, to be able to walk forward.
Yeah.
Did I mess up? Yep. Correct it. Or just say, well, that's the way it is. I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to let that stand in my way.
Right.
And that's how I've kind of walked through the life now, and is being able to let go of those things and not hold on.
Yeah, beautiful. Gail, I know you got to get going, so I want to give you a chance to share some final words.
Yeah, just very quickly on the forgiveness piece, before I say goodbye and share some final thoughts. I've struggled I've really struggled with forgiveness. At times, forgiveness of myself, and at times, forgiveness of others. I have at multiple times been the anger holder, the tempest in the teapot. And so I think a big piece of that is, number one, not suppressing your anger. That is a very catalytic energy, and it needs to move. And I believe, or at least in my experience, it needs to move before you even go to forgiveness. And forgiveness, to me anyway, is not necessarily, it is a letting go. It is a releasing of the story. It is a releasing of the pain and suffering around it. And that's a process, and it may take time, and you just need to give yourself patience around it. It is not saying that what happened to you is okay.
Right.
Those things can exist at the same time. And in fact, if you're able to look at it and release it, and at the same time hold, this behavior is not okay, or this situation is not okay for me, that to me is a forgiveness process, because in acknowledging that, you're shifting your energy around whatever that experience was. And if it comes up again, because you're right, the universe does like to test us. Ideally, you show up to that differently. And then ideally, it leaves your life for good. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I know a lot of people are like me and really struggled to understand forgiveness and what the benefits of it were and everything. It's not saying that the other whatever the other person or the other or what that situation was okay. And then as far as like this whole feeling of, oh my God, I should, like, how could I be so stupid, or I should have known better, or I'm an idiot, right? I think that's a normal human response. And I would invite you to pause, and when you can, ask a kinder question around, okay, I made a mistake. I made this mistake. I fell for it. And what was I needing? What did I need at that time? What was this all about for me? Mm-hmm. And I think that can quickly shift someone out of that judgment. And, I had to say it. I had to say it, into curiosity. And that's where real healing can begin.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Gail. And I know you've got to head off, so we'll say goodbye now, and we'll see you next time. Yeah. And Sarah, I want to give you a chance to say some final words as well.
I think I'm one of these people these days, and I go into playing devil's advocate. Why is this individual the way they are? Why are they doing what they do? It doesn't mean I think it's right. It's just about, okay, is there a reason behind it? I don't have to accept what they've done. I don't have to like what they've done. But I think it's like learning my own story when I was a child. As a baby, I couldn't understand that it was circumstances outside of other people's control that was affecting me. And so sometimes there could be mitigating circumstances. Most of the time there aren't. It's just people not being very nice. But that's a judgment thing. So I attempt to stay out of judgment. But it also helps me then to be able to move away from it. To be able to take that step back and say, okay, there may be some reasons why things have gone on in your life. I don't have to be a part of this anymore. And it's a way of releasing yourself. The forgiveness for me is more about forgiving myself for allowing them to control me the way they did. Not necessarily forgiving them, because if I'd said no from the outset, they wouldn't have been able to do it to me. They couldn't have done it without my participation. So am I prepared to participate in that stuff anymore? Not if I become aware of it, I'm not. And I think it's taking back that, okay, am I giving my power away, or am I holding my power to myself? And so there are many different ways to look at it. And I love the fact that we all share it differently, and our thoughts and perspectives. But it's, for me, it is very much that, is there a reason? Doesn't have to be necessarily a good one, but is there a reason? Staying out of judgment and saying, not for me. No. And as the saying goes,
yeah, I was going to say,
what part of no don't you understand?
Right. Well, thank you for that, Sarah. And I know that you've got to get going as well, because you've got your other program coming up in a few minutes. So we'll say goodbye to you as well. And Scott, you and I will finish it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So did you have some final words you wanted to share?
Compassion for yourself in the judgment. Grace, we use those words when we deal with other people, but it's most important to use it with yourself. No matter how guilty, shame, anger, whatever you're feeling, it's okay to feel it, and then forgive yourself for being in there and learning the lesson.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that I didn't realize that we were going to come to a place of forgiveness in this episode. I thought we'd be talking about a lot of other stuff, but it seems like a natural enough place to come to. And I think a great place for us to put a pause on this episode. What do you think?
Love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for you people who showed up on the live show. I see Dawn, Shelley, and Wendy there. Thank you for being here. I hope you got something out of it. I want to say thank you to all of you who are watching the recording, and to thank to everybody, because, you know, we're all humans. We all fall for stuff. We all have these little foibles. We trust people, and sometimes we end up getting burned as a result. The key to remember is that it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you're gullible. It just means that somebody else figured out a way to manipulate you into doing something that maybe wasn't the best choice for you. So forgive yourself, as we have suggested. Love yourself. Have compassion for yourself. And keep giving yourself permission to grow and expand, and still find ways to trust without necessarily giving your trust away. So I think that's what I'd like to end with. I want to thank you all for being here. I'd like to remind you that you can see the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And we'll see you next time on Soul Empowerment.